Imagine this. It's a cold winter morning, back in 1917. You're in a busy Canadian port city, and then in literally the blink of an eye, an entire district is just gone, wiped off the map. And the craziest part? This whole catastrophe started with a few small, almost forgettable mistakes.
4 a.m. That's it. That's the exact moment time just stopped for thousands of people. On December 6th, at 4 minutes past 9, the world completely changed for the city of Halifax. I mean, what on earth could cause that kind of sudden total devastation?
Get this, we are talking about the largest man-made explosion before the atomic age. I mean, this thing was so powerful, it was the gold standard for destruction for almost 30 years. A single blast that had the same punch as nearly 3,000 tons of TNT. Just let that sink in for a second.
So let's dive into Section 1, a city erased. To really get a handle on the impact here, you first have to understand the sheer force we're dealing with. I mean, how does a whole part of a city just disappear?
All right, so this all went down in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Now, you gotta remember, this was a city at war. A super important port, buzzing with soldiers and supplies shipping off to Europe. And on that morning, this explosion, well, it didn't just cause a little damage. No, it completely leveled the Richmond district. And as if that wasn't enough, it created a tsunami that just ripped through whatever was left standing.
Okay, Section 2, 2 ships, 1 fate. The big question is, how did this even happen? You know, the story doesn't start with one big, glaring mistake. Nope. It starts with 2 ships. 2 ships that were never, ever supposed to cross paths. So let's hit rewind and see how a couple of tiny delays ended up setting the stage for an absolute disaster.
You know, it all really comes down to this almost poetic, terrible coincidence. On one hand, you've got the SS Mont-Blanc pulling into Halifax with a secret, and I mean deadly cargo. And on the other hand, you've got the SS Imo just trying to get out of port. The kicker? Both were running late. And both of them ended up stuck in Halifax for one very, very fateful night.
And the first link in this chain of disaster, it was something so boring, so everyday. The Imo was supposed to get a coal delivery, but it was late. That's it. A simple delay meant it couldn't leave that day. Just a routine hiccup that literally no one would have thought twice about.
And then, here comes the second link. The Mont-Blanc shows up, but it's just a little too late. The big anti-submarine nets they used to protect the harbor already closed for the night. You know, just a standard wartime thing. So the Mont-Blanc had no choice but to drop anchor and wait outside until morning. See what's happening? 2 tiny, unrelated delays suddenly putting 2 ships on a direct collision course.
But you might be wondering, what was the big deal? Why was the Mont-Blanc so dangerous? Well, this is where it gets really terrifying. This wasn't just any old cargo ship. The Mont-Blanc was, completely unknown to anyone in Halifax, a gigantic floating bomb.
I mean, just take a look at what this ship was carrying. We're talking millions of kilograms of high explosives. You've got ridiculously unstable picric acid, you've got TNT, and to top it all off, barrels of benzene, which is basically super flammable fuel just sloshing around on the deck. This ship wasn't just a ship, it was a catastrophe waiting for a single spark.
All right, Section 3, collision in the Narrows. So it's the morning of December 6th. The nets are open, both ships are finally moving again, and they're in this tight channel called the Narrows. This is it. This is the moment where a whole bunch of miscommunications and plain old human error are about to turn what should have been a minor bump into an absolute nightmare.
And here's how it all goes wrong, step by step. First, the Imo, which is leaving, has to swerve to avoid another ship. But in doing so, it moves right into the wrong lane, directly into the path of the incoming Mont-Blanc. What happens next is basically a deadly game of chicken. Neither captain wants to back down. They're just staring each other down. Finally, the Imo's captain blinks and throws his engines into reverse. And here's the most tragic, ironic twist of this entire story. The one move that was supposed to prevent a crash is the very thing that sealed the city's fate. As the Imo reversed, its hull scraped against the Mont-Blanc. That scrape created sparks. And where did those sparks fly? Right into those leaky barrels of benzene on the deck. And just like that, the fuse was lit. So now we move into the fourth part, the inevitable explosion. The Mont Blanc is a raging inferno. At this point, there is absolutely no stopping what's about to happen. The crew knew it better than anyone. They were on a ticking time bomb.
Okay, so at 8:45 a.m., we have the collision, and the fire starts. Just 5 minutes later, Captain Lemedic knows it's hopeless. He orders his crew to abandon ship. And they do. Immediately. They knew that fire was burning its way down to the mountain of explosives below. So for almost 20 minutes, this burning, unmanned ghost ship just silently drifts towards the Halifax shoreline. And all the while, people on shore are gathering to watch the show, totally clueless about the unbelievable danger they're in. And then it happens. Detonation. A flash so bright it was blinding, and a fireball that shot a mile into the sky. The shockwave from this thing moved faster than the speed of sound, just vaporizing everything in its path. It was so powerful it pushed the water of the harbor away, creating a massive tsunami that came crashing back into the city that was already in ruins.
Which brings us to the aftermath. Section 5, Halifax in ruins. So what was the real cost of this incredible chain of failures? Honestly, the numbers are just staggering. It's almost impossible to even wrap your head around.
The human cost was just devastating. We're talking about roughly 2,000 people killed. And for about half of them, there was no warning at all. They just died. Instantly. Gone. Vaporized by the blast, or crushed by their own homes and offices collapsing on top of them. And on top of all the people who died, another 9,000 were injured. And here's just a horribly cruel detail. A lot of those people, they were the onlookers, the ones who went to their windows to watch the burning ship. The force of the blast shattered that glass, and thousands were blinded in an instant. Physically, the city was annihilated. An entire district, the Richmond district, over a square kilometer of land was just obliterated, gone. Homes, factories, churches, schools, everything was reduced to nothing more than splinters and rubble. And it all happened in seconds.
And if all that wasn't bad enough, to make a truly horrible situation even worse, a blizzard hit the very next day. So now you have 1,500 people who are instantly homeless in the dead of a Canadian winter, facing freezing temperatures with literally nothing.
You know, when you really look back at this, the Halifax explosion isn't just a story about one big mistake. It's a perfect, tragic example of what we call a system failure. It's when a whole bunch of tiny, separate errors all connect in just the wrong way. A late coal delivery, a closed gate, a wrong turn in a channel, a bit of stubbornness. Each one was just a tiny crack in the system, but when they all lined up, they shattered a city. So what's the takeaway here? The story of Halifax is this really stark, terrifying reminder that a huge disaster is almost never just one big, dramatic event. More often than not, it's the explosive finale to a bunch of small, quiet failures, all lining up in the absolute worst way possible. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? How many tiny cracks are there in the systems we all rely on every single day, just waiting for the right moment or the wrong one to combine?